Health and Fitness with David Hollywood.
Hello and welcome. On this week's programme we talk about defying the ageing process. Spoiler alert here, it does involve eating well and exercising. International Epilepsy Day is on the 10th of February. Time, safe and stay are the three key words in guiding us in how to help someone having a seizure. Epilepsy Ireland joins us on the programme to tell you everything you need to know about seizure first aid. And we profile a new pilot course at SETU. They've just kicked off a 12-week Level 6 certificate course for carers who are deaf or hard of hearing. Project coordinator Nicola McEntee is on to talk to us about equality and education. Towards the Limits of Human Ageing Physiology. This is a new study that's been published in the Journal of Medical and Science in Sports and Exercise. It looks at the physiology, the training and the nutrition of 3 indoor rowing athletes who've won in the 50 over, 60 over and 70 over categories in the World Rowing Indoor Championships. Lots of Midlands interest around this study as well. We will be speaking very shortly to champion rower Ken McDonald, who's living in Moneygall. Dennis Crowley was the over 60 candidate from Lucan in Dublin, and Paul Gallen was the over 70 subject. He's from Athlone in Westmeath. From TUS in Athlone, we are joined by Lorcan Daly, the man behind the report. He's an assistant lecturer in sport and exercise sciences at TUS. Lorcan, I'm going to start with yourself. Thanks very much for joining us on the programme. What gave you the motivation to produce this study towards the limits of human ageing physiology?
Thanks, William David. It's definitely a very interesting topic. So I initially got started on this area when I did a similar research project last year on my own grandfather. So he was another world champion, so over 90s. He'd won multiple world championships. So working as a sports scientist, I was always interested in him. So watching him for, competing for many years, he was unique in that he started at age 73. Before that, never did any exercise really, and then got up to a very high level. Once I did that work, that got a lot of interest, and it is a very useful topic to study in terms of understanding human health and aging. So then I was looking to expand it, and I was well aware of the lads, Ken, Paul and Dennis. So they're obviously doing really well, and they were, even Richard would know of them, my grandfather. So I got chatting to Paul mostly. So we're both in Athlone. We knew of each other through that, and also at the college here was working with Athlone Rowing Club, and also Paul's son John works with my fiance. So we had a few different connections, and then met up and had been chatting a few times, and then I suppose planned out the study. So we got a good look at the lads' physiology, how their body works, how they likely develop to such a high level throughout their lifespan. And we can take a lot of useful learnings from it, definitely.
Yeah, I'm going to get on to those useful learnings very shortly. At this point, we'll bring in Ken McDonald. Ken, you've obviously been really thriving in your rowing career over the course of the last number of years. How much did you enjoy being part of this study? How important do you think it is that these kinds of studies are done?
Hi, David. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, I was delighted to be asked to be on part of the study. I suppose as the study went on, and realising the challenges involved and the strenuous parts of the test, I suppose my enthusiasm may not have been as high at the start as it was during the study, but it was great to be part of it. I was very fortunate to have done so well at the World Indoor Rowing Championships, winning the 500 and the 2K gold medals, beating some stiff competition from all over the world. I was thrilled to be part of the study, and it's nice to see the results after all the work that Lorcan has put into it.
Yeah, well, I think particularly from your own perspective, like you were the 50 plus subject, which means that you've, according to this report, based on what you're doing, you've many more decades of competition and good health ahead of you.
Yeah, well, if the madness keeps going, I'll be rowing for a few more years. But yeah, no, look, I've been rowing since I was 14 years of age,
Wow.
and it's been a sort of a lifestyle for me. I I like keeping a high level of fitness. It complements what I do in my day to day work in the guards. I'm working crime specialist training, so a lot of the courses that we deliver are very physical. So it's important that I can demonstrate and um, I suppose be an ambassador for some of the training that we deliver. And I don't expect anyone to do anything that I wouldn't be able to do myself.
Yeah, well, I think unfortunately for everyone else, that's a very long list of things. I'm going to bring Lorcan back in. We've heard from Ken there about the fact that he started very young, and I suppose you probably found in your study that the old aged maxim of use it or lose it really does apply to physical fitness and strength and health generally. Obviously, from Ken's perspective and the subjects in your study, rowing from an early age or being very physically active and having good nutrition from an early age is really important. But anyone listening who feels they can improve on it, the rewards are there in your work to be seen if people do take the time to have a go at this.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Like in a perfect scenario, you'll be, training active your whole life, eating well. But time and again, we see examples where, you can start very late and then get up to a very high level. But yes, of course, ideally, you'd continue it throughout the life. But yeah, it is amazing. Like these guys showed remarkable fitness, unbelievable standards across the age group. So that kind of shows us what can be done with a high level of training. But looking at these athletes are a perfect example of age and how well you can age, because I suppose it gives us an insight into what really happens when you age healthily. So when we think of aging, traditionally, just looking around society, a lot of it is a problem that people are, very inactive for 20, 30, even 40 years. And a lot of the deterioration you'd see in your ability to walk around or do daily tasks is probably because of that inactivity mainly, rather than actual aging. So looking at these athletes is the best way to study aging, we would say.
As an aside, this is just anecdotal, but from what I can see in my lived experience, we're becoming more sedentary on a general basis as a population. You see the scooters, you see people's worlds are wrapped around with technology that kind of takes away any exercise decision or incidental exercise. Would that give you grave concern going into the future for the general population's health in the future?
Yes, definitely. I think the trends are a bit worrying in some instances. But definitely, I think, people in some ways as well might be becoming more aware of, the benefits of physical activity. So I suppose there is a little bit of a balance. Maybe the key takeaway really is that if you go from nothing to a very little amount of physical activity, you get tremendous benefits. So it's nearly like an exponential relationship. So for instance, if you go from, I don't know, 2,000 steps a day to like 6,000, your all-cause mortality or risk of death can go down by as much as 60% in some instances. So if you're going from nothing to very little, you'll get a massive benefit. But usually that bit more will always be better. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say overall. There are some definitely more trends. But again, there's also some awareness. It's more of a topic of interest for people. But that might be a case of, the fitter people just get a bit fitter and more active, and then the other people maybe less so. So it's hard to know.
Yeah, I think that the qualitative angle there is hard to figure out on the basis that each individual has their own matrix of motivations and reasons and that type of thing. Ken, from the perspective of the rowing world, like guys who train with you at club level or national level, you must give them such great encouragement to keep competing, considering the levels that you're able to reach and perform at. And obviously this study highlighted what the likes of Dennis and Paul are able to do at older ages as well. Do you think younger generation of rowers, for instance, take a bit of inspiration from that type of thing?
Yeah, look, it's nice to put it up to the young lads. I raced at the National Indoor Rowing Championships over 500 meters recently, and I raced in the open category and beat. I was lucky enough again to win the gold medal there. So, I beat a lot of younger athletes over that distance. And look, people, I'm back rowing with my own crew. The average age is about 24, 25. And my scores are comparable to, and probably ahead of most of the lads in the crew. And my intention is again to row at club level this year. So I'll be rowing against universities and colleges from around the country. And I'm not going to put my name forward unless I think I can bring something to the pot. So look, I'd like to think that there are athletes, looking at my times and scores, and maybe even older athletes in their 30s or 40s, and they might look at my scores and my performances, and it might spur them on to to push themselves a little bit harder. Because I think the common misconception is, and you'd hear it a lot in maybe the GAA and other sports, that when you get to your mid-30s that your career is coming to a close. If I'm to look at my times now to where they were 25 years ago when I won my first Senior A championship, I'm only 5 seconds off where I was 25 years ago, and that's early in the season at the moment. So I'd hope to beat, or at least equal, my time over 2,000 metres as the season goes on this year.
Yeah, that's remarkable considering the length of time since you set that mark and how close you are to it now. Lorcan, Ken mentioned GAA there. So rowing was the sport that you hung your hat on in terms of this study. What's your understanding of how we age when it comes to competing in other disciplines and sports? I suppose that can be quite specific based on the demands.
Yes, I think it's probably, there's variability in the sports demands, as you're saying there. Like, it would be ideal to obviously continue sport as long as possible. I suppose rowing is excellent in that you have very low injury risk. It's very controlled, whether you're indoor or outdoor, very similar. Possible issues with a team sport GA, as you get, we'll say, towards 40 or whatever, there is just more exposure, more of a chance of injury, I would say, because of, the random changes of direction impacts. So that might be an additional variable. So, I mean, if you were having knocks, we'll say 35 plus, it could be a case of maybe moving to another sport as an option. But yeah, there's just, I suppose, more inherent risks in the team sport. That's maybe why people end up moving away at some point.
Yeah, that all makes sense. We're going to take a very brief break on health and fitness. When we return, we're going to understand maybe a bit more of the specifics of putting together a piece of research like this, both from the subject's perspective, Ken MacDonald, and of course from Lorcan Daly's perspective, who is behind the report. You're listening to Health and Fitness. Don't go anywhere.
Health and Fitness with David Hollywoods on Midlands 103.
Welcome back to the programme. We have been discussing a brand new study that's been brought out by Lorcan Daly from TUS Athlone, Towards the Limits of Human Ageing Physiology. Lorcan's an assistant lecturer in sports and exercise sciences at TUS. One of his subjects was a Moneygall man, Ken MacDonald, who is a champion rower over the age of 50. We are talking about the ageing body and I suppose just how high performance levels can be maintained thanks to proper nutrition and exercise over the long term. Lorcan, you had really fantastic subjects to work with, Dennis and Ken, of course, and Paul Gallen from Athlone. What were you doing with them to collect the data you needed to study to come to the conclusions that you did reach?
Yeah, so we brought the lads in separately to the laboratory here in TUS Athlone. So we wanted to understand just their bodies, really, how they function, how that might have changed over the years. So we did a number of tests. We looked at their lung function, heart rate, VO2 capacity, so how much oxygen can they take in and use, their maximum power output, a number of factors like that, their efficiency. And then we could just profile them, compare them to each other, and then we'll say, compare them to an average person, or we'll say a young Olympic champion. How might they be different there?
Okay, that's very interesting. Ken, as a subject, how did you find being part of this? I imagine the athlete in you actually quite appreciated and enjoyed the process. Maybe it was a way for you to learn more about your own capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure to be part of the study. It was an honour to be part of the study, I suppose. Yeah, I found the study itself quite enlightening. Just again having a look at my body composition, my percentage body fat, um, and just to be able to reflect on what that was back in the day when I was rowing with the Irish national team, the high performance team, and then looking at I suppose the challenges of the maximal test, sort of a step test on the row machine. So I think it was every 4 minutes we had to go off at a certain pace and try and maintain that, and then that increased every 4 minutes. It got harder and harder until we were to the point of physical exhaustion. So it was quite challenging in that, and I knew that was coming up. So I was, anytime you have to push your body really hard, I get nervous anyhow, and I realised that the challenge of doing those tests. But again, it was fantastic to be part of it.
Lorcan, was there anything about the study, the process of putting it together, getting it published, working with the guys, did any of it surprise you along the way, or what were the things you learned you didn't expect to learn?
Yeah, definitely there was a number of surprises. So as you might imagine, it's a slow process getting the whole thing together, getting it through publication. But yeah, there was definitely a number of, I suppose, really surprising and unique findings that have never been really seen necessarily before. So we made like a model essentially to compare, well, here's a young Olympic champion and here's, the guys of the different ages. So we could compare different characteristics from them. And it was, I suppose, most striking that some of the characteristics were essentially the same as a young Olympic champion, despite them being 25 to 45 years older. So, for instance, their efficiency, how much energy they burn relative to how much power they're applying on the rower, that was essentially no different to a young Olympic champion. Another marker, basically their abilities of their muscle to take in and use oxygen, we can measure that. It was essentially no different to a young Olympic champion. So obviously their performance will decline a little bit. You're looking at maybe 0.7% per year on average. But that's when we compare, an Olympic champion to the other guys. So if they compare them to themselves when they were young, we see a much less decline. So, as Ken said there, he's trying to be the best he's ever been in terms of the 2K. So definitely, yeah, there's some very interesting findings from that.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Ken, Lorcan touched on it there. You're trying to be the best you've ever been. Talk us through what that involves. So the lived life of an elite athlete, what's the kind of stuff that you might be doing, and we could take a leaf out of your book if and when it's practical, so that we can maybe follow along in your slipstream.
I suppose a legal sports enhancer for me is sleep. So if I can get to bed before 10 o'clock at night and have maybe 9 hours sleep, I know I'm going to wake up the next day fresh and motivated to train, because fatigue blunts our performance. So if you're tired, you're not going to be able to train as well as you can, and you leave yourself susceptible to injury. So sleep would be one of the key things. Nutrition, really important, so to have a good breakfast, I'd have, maybe porridge, 2 eggs, brown bread, and a glass of water and a cup of coffee for my breakfast in the morning. So that sort of sets me up for the day. Might have a banana then as a snack during the day with another coffee, and then I do my training. So I might train twice a day, or depending on the week, maybe once a day. So 6 days a week, maybe 7 days a week, twice a day, and that's my training. So I do strength training. So that would be low repetitions of a heavy weight.
Okay.
Sort of 4 sets with 5 reps of a heavy weight. So like squats and pull-ups, bench press, lunges, stuff like that.
And when you're doing heavy lifting with weights, you're keeping it at 5 repetitions of an action per exercise, and at most in a session, 4 sets of those.
That's correct. Yeah. So I'm walking away from the weights thinking to myself, now that was heavy. But again, it's important to keep good form and good technique and all that when you're doing it. So I would do strength training 3 days a week.
Okay.
I do long cardio on the rowing machine or on the bike or running, maybe 3 times, and then I would do high intensity fast. So again, for rowing, if you want, or any sport, if you want to be fast in your sport, you have to train fast. So I do an undulating type of training where it targets strength, targets endurance, targets power. So I'm working all the energy systems when I'm training. So because that's what you need when you row or when you're in any sport. I'm a strength conditioning coach. I've worked with Munster Rugby. I've worked with Tipperary, and I've worked in Offaly with the hurlers in different clubs and that. So I have an appreciation of the different elements of fitness. So nutrition, sleep, hydration is very important, to keep your hydration levels up. And it's a lifestyle for me. It's, again, like I've said before, it's like brushing your teeth every day. It's a habit, sort of a life-forming habit. So it's to keep on top of it, not to let it go. I've never not trained. I started rowing when I was 14. I haven't stopped training since I was 14.
Yeah, you've managed to make that way of living your way of life, and if it feels like brushing your teeth every day, you just do it because you feel, well, there's no feeling about it. You just do it. It's part of the habit. And Lorcan, for any of us who aren't quite as committed to Ken, exercising between 5 and 7 times a week, or double sessions on certain days, and then the whole nutrition side of things he talked us through. And there are things that we can incorporate into our lives. If we can make them habits, they'll make a huge difference in the long run.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love that, and our overview from Ken, like the brushing the teeth. I mean, imagine if people were saying, I don't have time to brush my teeth, or I brush them once a week, or don't, it's a totally different view on it. But yeah, like, I think people might, see this and think, well, that's so out of my world. I've never been to a gym or whatever. But, if you're that bit older, even something like, I don't know, a walk every second day would make an enormous difference. So as I said there, if you go from 2,000 steps a day to 6,000, you're taking a massive slice out of a number of risks. Even something like, a long walk, or a more brisk walk every second day. Even something like, if you're sitting at home, just get up and down from the seat 20 times, challenge yourself a little bit, do some sort. It doesn't have to be going in squatting in the gym as such. Doing anything like that at all will have huge benefits if you're starting at a very low point. Yes, in an ideal scenario, you'd be doing some kind of hard training, some bit of strength, power and endurance, as Ken does. But if you're miles off that, start with something that you can integrate, and that'll be, a huge benefit, definitely.
Yeah, I think we've covered some great ground here. Let's just conclude with your report's conclusions. I'm looking at it now, and one of the lines that I like in this is that the data infers that the metabolic, the cardiovascular, the neuromuscular systems, they all remain remarkably adaptable despite the fact we're older, as long as we're subjecting it to rigorous exercise training. And ultimately, Lorcan, our human body is remarkable. It remains receptive and responsive to the inputs that we give it, regardless of the age we are.
Absolutely. There's so many examples, like studies with really, people over 95, people over 100 improving their strength or power. There's a nice one there, a cyclist. He was 101 years old. He had the world record for the hour power output. And from his age, from 101 to 103, he intensified his training, and he broke his own record by another 13%. So you can be literally any age, and if you just apply more power or do, extend whatever you're doing, we can see improvements. So it is remarkably plastic, the human body. Whatever you do it with it will adapt, almost certainly.
You have been listening to Lorcan Daly from TUSATH Athlone talking about his Toward the Limits of Human Aging Physiology study published in the Journal of Medicine and Science in Sport and Exercise. We've also been joined by champion rower Ken MacDonald. Gentlemen, thanks so much for your time, and thanks for joining us on Health and Fitness this evening.
Thanks, David.
Thanks a million, David.
Health and Fitness with David Hollywoods on Midlands 103.
Welcome back. If someone in your company were to have a seizure, would you know what to do? International Epilepsy Day is February 10th, and our reporter Jack Irwin has been talking to Patrick McGeoghan from Epilepsy Ireland about time, safe and stay. These are the 3 words I'm going to ask you to remember after listening to Jack and Patrick. Jack's first question to Patrick is about time, safe and stay and their importance and their meaning.
First and foremost, they're incredibly important, and I suppose the message of our campaign to be released on Monday is that seizure first aid becomes much clearer when you know what to do. How do you know what to do? You remember the 3 key words of time, safe and stay. And I suppose just give you the headline and then I can go in further detail on each of them. So time is time the seizure, safe, keep the person safe, and stay is stay with them. Very, very important information to know. We'd estimate that there's around 900 people living with epilepsy in Westmeath, about 500 in Longford, and around the 900 mark in Laois, and just under 800 in Offaly. So massive amounts of people living with epilepsy in the local community, and that's why it's really, really important to know about time, safe, stay. So time is time the seizure. If it goes over 5 minutes, an ambulance needs to be called because it's potentially dangerous for that person. Safe is keep the person safe during the seizure. Now that means in a convulsive seizure, Jack, where I suppose many of your listeners might be familiar with that, where a person, jerks suddenly and falls to the ground. That means if they're in danger of hitting off a chair, move the chair, not the person. It also means never putting anything in a person's mouth and never restraining them. They're 2 medical myths when it comes to seizure first aid. And unfortunately, we have to talk about the negative because we still hear of it happening. So do not put anything in a person's mouth during a seizure and do not restrain them. As part of SAFE as well, what we're asking the public to be aware of is the fact that there's more than one type of seizure. And there are types of seizures where a person can be fully upright, behaving oddly, for the want of a better word, and isn't necessarily aware of their surroundings. So the danger with that type of seizure is that a person could be walking or about to walk onto a busy road, for example. So again, in that type of seizure, you keep the person safe by gently guiding them away from danger, but again, not restraining them or pinning them down or shouting or roaring or screaming at them. And then the final key word is stay. You stay with the person throughout their seizure and shortly thereafter, because often a person who's after experiencing an epileptic seizure will feel dazed, confused, exhausted, and it'll take a little time to come to. So if you stay with that person, speak gently to them throughout and let them know what is happening as you're there to support them, it can really make a world of a difference to that person as they recover. So as mentioned, there's well over and around maybe 3,000 in terms of the numbers of people with epilepsy in the Midlands in total. So it's really, really important information to know. So on International Epilepsy Day and over the weekend, we're encouraging people to go to our website, www.epilepsy.ie, and learn more about time, safe and stay.
And Paddy, you were saying there that within it's the 5 minute mark is when people should call an ambulance if it gets past 5 minutes during a seizure. Just what would be the instances where an ambulance should be called before 5 minutes?
Yeah, so there is, I suppose, one thing we always aim to highlight as well, Jack, is if you're in any doubt, call an ambulance. The person themselves or the ambulance crew are not going to be given out to you on the basis of kind of calling an ambulance out of concern. So that is an important message to take away. Obviously, time, safe, stay is what we want people to remember. But if you are in any doubt, call an ambulance. But as you say, yes, there is different instances where an ambulance should be called. So they are, if the person is physically injured as a result of their seizure. So it's not necessarily you're calling an ambulance for the seizure, you're calling an ambulance for the fact that they might have had a heavy fall, or you could see that there's a break, for example. So obviously an ambulance needs to be called in that situation. You need to call an ambulance as well if the person briefly comes out of their seizure and then goes back into another one. Again, that's potentially extremely dangerous to the person and is a medical emergency. We also tell people to call an ambulance if you know it's the person's first seizure, or if you don't know the person has epilepsy. Usually a person will have some sort of identifier on, be it a wristband or maybe a card in their wallet or something. But if, for example, that your friend of 10, 15 years suddenly has a seizure and they've never mentioned epilepsy before in their lives, then an ambulance needs to be called. And finally, just another thing we say is if the person is pregnant, if you know the person is pregnant and they have a seizure, just as a precautionary measure, call an ambulance just in case. So again, you're not necessarily calling an ambulance as a result of the seizure. You're calling an ambulance for the different circumstances. And then, of course, the important one, if the seizure goes over 5 minutes, you need to call an ambulance as well.
In terms of the stigma associated with epilepsy, do you feel like that's still a thing within Ireland, or has there been a bit of improvement on it?
Yeah, listen, there's somewhat of a political answer, to be honest, Jack. There has been improvement, but there's still a lot to do. Thankfully, I suppose it is coming out of the shadows, and I think that's down to sort of people coming forward and sharing their stories with epilepsy. In the lead up to International Epilepsy Day, we've shared several stories, both from a family perspective and from a lived experience perspective. And actually, they're all up on the website. And basically, the stigma associated with epilepsy usually comes from a lack of information or lack of knowledge. That really kind of lack of knowledge that can be addressed within 5 minutes if you go onto the website and actually learn more about the condition. Unfortunately, you do still hear of situations where a person has had a really sort of bad experience as a result of kind of revealing their diagnosis. But thankfully, that is now becoming the exception rather than the norm. And as I say, that's down to people actually speaking out about their condition, actually sharing the realities of living with epilepsy, saying this is how it affects me, this is how I can be challenged as a result of the condition, and that gives rise to facts being put out there rather than myths. So yeah, as I say, somewhat of a political answer, but things are definitely improving, I think. And key to that is people telling their stories of life with the condition. And
I suppose the awareness as well. Do you feel that is improving as well?
Yeah, so like when you talk about things like seizure first aid, for example, like some people have heard us sort of campaigning on this issue on Time Safe Day before, was saying kind of we're going back to the well on that, and we first introduced Time Safe Day in 2021. But we're trying to reinforce the message of the correct response to a seizure. And we are seeing steps in the right direction in terms of the wider public's understanding of seizure first aid. I'm going to talk a lot of figures now, but back in 2013, long before my time, we started doing public awareness surveys. So that's kind of surveys where almost like the political polls you would see, Jack, where 1,000 members of the public are surveyed and kind of asked about their attitudes and awareness of epilepsy. So last year was obviously the first time we had 10 years of data. So by comparing last year to the first year we did it, we can see marked changes in the public's perception of epilepsy. You asked earlier on about stigma. One of the big issues in the past would have been around employment of people with epilepsy. Now, in the most recent survey we did, 80% of the public said epilepsy would not be a barrier to a person's employment, which shows a huge step forward to what it would have been decades ago. Specific in terms of the seizure first aid, so back in 2013, 10 years ago, 0% said you should time the seizure. Last year, 45% said you should time the seizure. It was a key response. So again, that shows a marked increase. Other things like restraining the person during a seizure, I think was in around 30% in 2013. It was down to 6% last year. And the whole thing of putting something in a person's mouth during a seizure dropped from in and around 50% of the public to I think it was in and around the 25% mark last year. So in terms of awareness, things are definitely improving. And again, I do put that down to people sharing their experiences, sharing their lived experience of epilepsy, supporting us as well in terms of kind of getting those keywords out there, the Time Safe Day out there, and using it in their day-to-day lives as to how you need to respond to a seizure. Now, I know offline we kind of said we're not expecting people to be neurologists, but there is key information that you can know about epilepsy and should know about epilepsy. And ultimately, that helps to improve people's lives. So it's really, really important to kind of take those couple of minutes over the weekend and on International Epilepsy Day to visit our website and learn more.
And as well, if you just want to mention your website there as well, so people can visit.
So it's www.epilepsy.ie. It's all getting dressed in the process of getting dressed up now for International Epilepsy Day with our new campaign. Hopefully some of your listeners will have started to see our new campaign popping up through their social media channels, maybe on their radio, on their chosen websites as well. So we kind of have a bit of a mixed bag in terms of how we're promoting the message, pretty much on everything. Quicker listing what we're not on rather than what we are. But yeah, the source of all that information is www.epilepsy.ie. We're also on every single social media channel going practically as Epilepsy Ireland. So you can find us there or the website, either or. Hopefully you will kind of give us a follow and share our message on International Epilepsy Day.
Thanks for speaking with us this evening, Paddy, on what is a very important topic. Thanks very much.
Pleasure, Jack. Thank you.
We are talking about equality of access to education for deaf people and the hard of hearing now.
Health and Fitness with David Hollywoods on Midlands 103.
Now, carers in Ireland have for the longest time had to struggle and fight and really grasp for support from the state. They've had to lobby hard and campaign, and also they've had to really, seek out and campaign for support from society. But one of the corners that are and have been providing plenty of support for carers in this country is SETU. Their Supporting Family Carers Across Ireland project has been giving formal education to those in caring roles and bringing in that crucial flexibility in and around the requirements that a carer would have, but giving them the empowerment of education alongside. Alongside this, in collaboration with the Irish Deaf Society, they are now delivering a Level 6 certificate in advocacy to deaf and hard of hearing family carers. Nicola McEntee is the project coordinator at SETU, and she joins us on Health and Fitness this evening. Nicola, thanks very much for taking our call. This latest addition to the education offering for family carers in this country from SETU, it really adds another level of accessibility and furthers equality as well. You might talk us through how it all came about.
Yes, David, we're delighted to be able to offer the 6 certificate in advocacy to deaf and hard to hear and family carers. Family carers experience many barriers in accessing third level educational programme, and for those from the deaf and hard of hearing community, they face additional barriers. So building on the success of the project to date, the Supporting Family Carers Across Ireland project, in which we have delivered over 700 certificates to family carers across Ireland in recognition of their skills and the valuable contribution they make to society, we have, I suppose, broadened our reach through working with the Irish Deaf Society in delivering this programme through Irish Sign Language. Irish Sign Language is the first language for those that are deaf and hard of hearing. So they find accessing mainstream education extremely challenging. But so by us delivering through Irish Sign Language, we are breaking down a barrier to education for those from the deaf and hard of hearing community.
Talk us through the practical realities of what you're talking about there then. If someone who is deaf or hard of hearing wants to take this level 6 certificate course at SETU, how will that work for them through Irish Sign Language?
So in order to provide the course through Irish Sign Language, the course is being co-lectured or co-delivered with ISL interpreters. So ISL interpreters are translating the course content for family carers. To do that, I suppose, efficiently and to make sure that every student has, I suppose, equal opportunity and access and information knowledge, we are actually delivering this programme online and recording the lectures so that students can play back the lecture and access the lecture as many times as they need to. We're also delivering over a longer period of time with shorter lectures to ensure that our students are being given adequate time to process the information.
It's great that this is being put on for those who are hard of hearing or part of the deaf community. And as you describe it there, it doesn't actually sound like a hugely onerous amount of layering on to the course to be able to support this catchment of people. Do you think other courses in other universities across the country might be able to take a leaf out of your book and apply this to more and more educational courses at third level in Ireland?
Yes, I think it is definitely possible. It doesn't sound like it's a huge amount of work, but I suppose in terms of the preparation, I suppose the organisation for the delivery to run smoothly, there is quite a significant amount of work, as the ISL interpreters are not third level lecturers. So we have met them before to ensure that they know the course content, to ensure that the translation is, I suppose, sufficient for our learners to break down the barriers. The ISL interpreters are very experienced though, and they are fantastic, and it is quite a small community. So what we found is that our ISL interpreters actually know some of the students that were on the course, which again helps our students kind of connect to us as a university and to the programme, and I suppose creates a comfortable learning environment for them. For many, it is their first time going back into third level education, and the level 6 certificate in advocacy is, I suppose, a very apt course for them to do, as they do have to, I suppose it's level 6, which is the first level we deliver at, but also it's a very practical course and something that they can apply to their own lives and advocating for their own rights and responsibilities.
Yeah, as you touched on there, it's not necessarily the way it should be, but people in the deaf community have had to advocate for their rights more than maybe they should otherwise have to do. So obviously crucial and practical skills for the real world. The course commenced this month. It's a 12-week course. What kind of feedback are you getting from those who are being educated in it?
So we're actually on week 3 of the course, and so far the feedback has been really positive. The students are really enjoying the course so far. I suppose week 1 they were a little bit nervous. It is a big leap for them back into education, which it is for anybody. And I suppose what people often forget is that re-entering education, it's not just the practical side of the time and going to lectures. There is an emotional element to it, and studying at third level can be quite an emotional experience. But through working with the students and ensuring that the lectures are just a little bit shorter, and ensuring or reassuring them that we are here to support them, keeping the lines of communication open with their students if they do have any questions after lectures, if they have any issues in accessing lecture notes, that we are here for them. So far we've had very positive feedback.
That's great. This is the January 2025 intake we're talking about. Is it January 26th that the next intake will come about in terms of the course?
So this is a pilot project. Okay. So I suppose as part of the Greater Supporting Family Carers Across Ireland project that has been, I suppose, running for the past 3 years. So what we endeavour to do, I suppose, is to learn from this initiative. It's a new initiative for us. It's a new initiative for the Irish Deaf Society. So we will do a little bit of research and review afterwards. And hopefully this will be the start of, I suppose, a greater collaboration, which we will be able to build upon this and the success of this, and provide more third level programmes to those from the deaf and hard of hearing community.
Yeah, hopefully the pilot does go well, and this kind of opportunity, equality of opportunity, can be extended for family carers who are part of the deaf community. Let's look more broadly at the project in terms of supporting family carers across Ireland with SETU. I was reading some of the quotes from some of the graduates in your literature over the course of this morning, and what really strikes me is how important personally the opportunity to further their own education is, coming from being a family carer as a context. Like, carers blow my mind in terms of the selfless way they live their lives and in support of others who need that help, and maybe it is a loved one or beyond. But this is a wonderful opportunity for them if they can take on a course like this in SETU to spend some time on themselves. And it sounds like, from what I was reading, it really does mean the world to them.
It certainly does, David. Just in November last year, on the 15th November 2024, we had a graduation ceremony in which we presented 253 family carers with their awards. I suppose the sense of hope, the sense of happiness in the room, the sense of achievement, the sense of pride, it was absolutely amazing. It's not just about receiving an award, it's the friendships they form, it's the self-care that they start to practice, it's the skills that they learn that they can apply to their day-to-day lives. In particular, one carer was telling me from completing the certificate in advocacy where she actually learned how to complete a reflective journal has really benefited her life, because instead of rushing and racing from one task to the other, what she's now doing at the end of every evening is taking a couple of minutes to reflect on, I suppose, her day and her feelings, and that it's really improved her self-esteem and her self-confidence as a result. Particularly those that their caring role does come to an end, it also gives them a sense of I suppose, purpose after their caring responsibilities come to an end. And also through the project, I suppose, to ensure continuity of the success of the project for carers when the project does come to the end, we do provide career guidance for our students in which they can explore other avenues, whether it's further education or employment. We actually have graduates of the programme that have returned to employment when their care enrolled ends, and we actually have other graduates that have gone on to do major awards. So it really is, I suppose, recognising the multidisciplinary skill set the family carers possess, the contribution that they make to society, the invaluable contribution. They save the state millions of euro every year, and it's also given them hope for the future.
Yeah, great point to finish on, that ultimately carers are unbelievable all-rounders when it comes to their skill set. It could be anything from time management to all sorts of things about being able to help someone else live life to the fullest. If people are listening, they might be a carer, they might know a carer, and they think that this course could be something that they want to look into, Nicola, how do they go about that?
Best way to go about it is to contact us at familycarers.cw@sctu.ie, or alternatively people can contact me directly at nicola.mcentee@sctu.ie.
Okay, great stuff, Nicola. The very best of luck with the rest of this pilot. We've been talking about these SETUs Supporting Family Carers Across Ireland project, which in collaboration with the Irish Deaf Society is delivering a Level 6 certificate in advocacy for deaf and hard of hearing family carers. You've been great with your time, Nicola. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, David.
Another week of Health and Fitness is done. If you have a story you'd like covered on the show, sport@midlands103.com is the email address. Joe Cooney is next with Country Roads. Myself and Jack will be back next week. Have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.